வணக்கம். மீண்டும் என் போட்காஸ்ட்க்கு வருகை. வெல்கம் பேக் டு மை போட்காஸ்ட். இன்றைக்கி லா 41. தம்பி சார், லா 41 படிங்க.
We've come to the last 8. So, first, 41st law. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoe. What happens first always appears better and more original than what comes after. If you succeed a great man or have a famous parent, you will have to accomplish double their achievement to outshine them. Don't get lost in their shadow or stuck in a past not of your own making. Establish your own name and identity by changing course. Slay the overbearing father, disparage his legacy, and gain power by shining your own way. சொல்லுங்க ஆனந்த்.
அதாவது, இஃப் யூ ஹேவ் அ ஃபேமஸ் ஃபாதர், ஹவு டு get out of his shadow. Being the son of a successful father is very difficult. Sometimes you have to take a complete U-turn and disparage it. இதில் ஹிஸ்ட்ரியில் நிறைய எக்ஸாம்பிள்ஸ் இருக்குது. ஸோ தி மோஸ்ட் ஃபேமஸ் எக்ஸாம்பிள் இன் ஹிஸ்ட்ரி இஸ் வாட் அவுரங்கசீப் did to ஷாஜஹான். அண்ட் மௌரியா எம்பையரில் what Ashoka did to Bindusara and Bindusara did to his father, Ajatashatru. ஸோ இது இந்தியன் கிங்டமில் இது ரொம்ப காமன். அண்ட் யூ கம்ப்ளீட்லி டேக் அ டர்ன் away from your father. Sometimes you seize power like what Shah Jahan did and what Ashoka the Great did, and built on your own life completely different, and establish yourself as the great leader and outshine your father. And this you do by throwing his legacy out completely under the bus and building a bigger one. But you are very smart. You have to take a portions of this legacy which you find useful. நீங்கள் இதை பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, கிங் ஃபிலிப் ஆஃப் மேசிடோனியா தான் கிரீஸை கான்குவர் பண்ணி கம்ப்ளீட்டாக யுனைட் பண்ணான். அவரோட செகண்ட் ஒய்ஃப் சன்னோ தேர்ட் ஒய்ஃப் சன்னு தான் அலெக்சாண்டர் தி கிரேட். அலெக்சாண்டர் அவங்க அப்பாவுக்கும் அவனுக்கும் ஒரு டஃப் ரிலேஷன்ஷிப். ஹிஸ் ஃபாதர் நெவர் லைக் அலெக்சாண்டர். பட் அவனை எப்போதுமே படுத்திகிட்டே இருப்பார். இன்ஃபேக்ட் there is a story of how he conquered his horse, and when a horse that nobody could ride, and Alexander's father challenged him to ride that horse. அந்த ஹார்ஸை அவன் என்ன பண்ணால், it was afraid of its own shadowன்னு கண்டுபிடிச்சான். Once he worked it out what the horse was afraid of, Alexander could tame that horse and ride it around. He established himself as a great, truly, அவங்க அப்பா whatever challenge he threw down, he stared at it and put it down. Then the Macedonians themselves assassinated Philip. ஒரு troubled situationல Alexander came in. He conquered, he took the elements of a strong army which his father built, quickly established his own control, and then conquered the world. And today nobody remembers Philip of Macedonia, but everybody remembers Alexander the Great. Nobody remembers Bindusara, everybody remembers Ashoka the Great. இது ஏன்ஷியன்ட் டைம்ஸில். இன் நம்ம டைம்ஸில் மேடம் காந்தி, இந்திரா காந்தி did to her father. Her father was a well-respected great leader, a great humanist. And she used elements of that power to get to power, and then showed her true fangs of what a great and ruthless leader she was. So, history is full of these examples. And using the elements of the law, again you go back to the Tatas. J.R.D. Tata was a very successful chairman of the Tatas. After J.N. Tata, he had a long reign. He was the only one to have a long reign. He built great companies such as Tata Motors, Tata Chemicals, Titan, started Tata Consulting Services. But before it could become big, he died. Air India was his company, and he was absolutely a great success. In a difficult environment, he was a great businessman, and nobody thought this act will be followed. In came Ratan Tata, his nephew. He took a completely different route. He sold some of what his uncle started, like Hammam and Lakme, and then pivoted and went abroad to build his legacy. He built a car. Tata Motors was his defining legacy. He built a car. He went and bought Jaguar Land Rover. He took an extraordinary bet in 2003 to buy Tetley and swallowed it successfully. And it now Tata Tea became Tata Consumer and a very successful consumer company. He pivoted Titan into gold and made it very successful. So he really took the brand global and conquered it. And today, not many people in your age group will know the great JRD. JRD is a hero of our time. And I was 24 when he died. And the whole of India was in tears when JRD passed away. Nobody thought that Ratan Tata could do what he has done. And today, the way Ratan Tata is being celebrated, I can, Munit, say that he has exactly what his uncle was. He has become as big as that, if not bigger. So, he is a guy who didn't throw the father completely under the bus, but took elements of what his uncle did and pivoted and really built on that. இந்த கூ பண்ணுறதுல நீங்கள் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா
கான்ட்ராஸ்டிங் நீ வந்து அனில் அம்பானி பற்றி சொல்லுங்கள்.
ஓகே, கான்வர்ஸில் இவன் சொல்லிட்டான் தம்பி, அதனால் சொல்கிறேன். Anil Ambani's father gave him a big legacy. He thought he is smarter than his father and threw the bathtub out of the water. What Dhirubhai wanted was the two sons to stay together, and each had his own unique skills. Had Anil Ambani not listened to Amar Singh and Tina Munim, his wife, he would have been part of a great empire today. Of course, he would have had his shares and he would have had to share the glory with his brother. But it would have been a very formidable empire and his brother would have covered his mistakes. But unfortunately, even though the brother...
No, and the brother also realized he wasn't a showy person. And Ambani had the showy personality. He tried to tell him, boss, you like being showy, you be showy. But let me run the organization from the background.
Yes.
But he could not digest that because people play to his ego like Amar Singh. And
all that and said, you have to be the boss. And finally, now he's a pauper. Officially a pauper.
His brother had to rescue him. Finally.
His brother rescued him. Similarly with Vijay Mallya. Vittal Mallya was one of the most powerful and richest men in the world. அதே மாதிரி தமிழில் எக்ஸாம்பிள் சொல்லுங்கனால ராஜராஜ சோழன் பிகாஸ் ஆஃப் சிவாஜி வி ரிமெம்பர் அண்ட் பிகாஸ் ஆஃப் கல்கிஸ் பொன்னியின் செல்வன் வி ரிமெம்பர் வெரி மச். பட் ஆக்சுவல் ரியலி இஃப் யூ லுக் அட் ஹிஸ்ட்ரி dispassionately, his son Rajendra Cholan was far greater than Rajaraja Cholan. In fact, he was called Gangaikonda Cholan because he went up to the Ganges and conquered it and took parts of Southeast Asia also. And not only that, he left Tanjavur, which was his father's legacy, and went and created a town called Jayakondan near Neyveli. And there is a Gangaikunda Cholapuram. அவன் பேர்லேயே ஒரு ஊரை கட்டி there is a miniature of that Tanjavur big temple. அதை எக்ஸாக்டாக காப்பி பண்ணி he was an extraordinarily successful guy. அதை தான் இப்போ அங்கே வந்து ஆர்கியாலஜி, தமிழ்நாடே ஆர்கியாலஜி தோண்டணும்னு தகராறு பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க. So Gangaikunda Cholapuram is a big legacy of Rajendra Chola. Though because of in popular Tamil cinema, nobody like Shivaji did a role for Rajendra Cholan. He is not so remembered. But Rajendra Cholan was definitely a bigger and more powerful emperor than his father. His father captured power, consolidated it. This guy took elements of it and made it a very, very big empire. So this is what I wanted you to understand, that you don't have to throw the father completely in jail like what Aurangzeb and Ashoka and Bindusara did. But you can definitely take elements of your father, pivot it and make your own life great. If your father was a big guy, there must have been some things he did right. Sometimes it goes completely wrong. Tendulkar அவன் பையனை கிரிக்கெட் ஆட விட்டது தப்பு. Because he became such a big national hero. There is no way his son could have overshone or become even a normal guy. That's why Bradman's son never played cricket. Sober's son never played cricket. But Tendulkar's son tried to play cricket. And I hope Vishwanathan Anand's son never plays chess. Because nobody can beat their records. ஆனந்தோட ரெக்கார்டை யாராலையும் உடைக்கவே முடியாது. 5-time world champion is not a joke. So, this is life. So, you have to know how to pivot. And you can become more successful in a completely different field. அப்படிங்கிறது என்னோட கருத்து. I should know because I had a very successful father. But since his success was in profession, very few people knew him. So life is like that. It's something like that. The reversal of the law is like I said, if you throw everything what your father built if you throw the baby out of the bathwater, then you will end up like Anil Ambani or Vijay Mallya. அதாவது அவங்க அப்பா பண்ணதெல்லாம் தப்புன்னு நீங்கள் சொல்ல வேண்டாம், ஔரங்கசேபா பண்ண வேண்டாம். பட் ராஜேந்திர சோழனோ ரத்தன் டாட்டா மாதிரியோ பண்ணிங்கன்னா லைஃப் டெஃபினட்டாக சக்ஸஸ்ஃபுல்லாக இருக்கும். உங்கள் அப்பாவோட கம்பீட் பண்ணாதீங்க. உங்கள் அப்பாவை நடுத்தரில் நிறுத்தி பண்ணணும்னு நான் சொல்லலை. பட் யூ வில் ஹாவ் நீங்கள் ஒரு ஸ்லைட் பாம்பே டையிங் மாதிரி யூ ஹவ் டு பிவட் இட். திஸ் இஸ் வாட் லைஃப் இஸ். வினோத் சார் நீங்கள் சொல்லுங்கள், நான் ரொம்ப பேசிட்டேன்.
Well, another example which comes to my mind is Julius Caesar's play written by William Shakespeare. In that, what happens is Caesar, in the beginning of the play, is loved by the Romans. He is looked upon as a god by the Roman people, and they worship him because he goes around conquering and expanding the Roman Empire, bringing treasures and wealth and fortune to the Roman people and the Roman capital. But the Senate is against him because they don't want him to grab all the power and become an emperor. They still want to be a republic. So Brutus, one of his closest friends, is poisoned by the senators and they assassinate him. After the assassination, the Rome is in a very tense situation because they loved Caesar and they can't believe Brutus has done this and the senators have done this. So they are about to bury Caesar, and Brutus comes to talk to the crowd, to calm the crowd down. And Mark Antony is also there. Mark Antony is Caesar's nephew, and he is quite...
No, Mark Antony is not his nephew.
Mark Antony. No, not Mark Antony. So,
Augustus Caesar is his nephew.
Sorry. Mark Antony is his friend. So Brutus says, Mark Antony, being his friend, if you want, you talk first. So, but Mark Antony very smartly says, boss, no, you go ahead and talk first. You're the great man, you talk first, I'll talk after you. So Brutus takes onto the stage and he gives a speech. In that speech, he puts Caesar down and he flames up the crowd against Caesar. And by the end of Brutus' speech, the crowd is saying Caesar is a horrible man. They've forgotten what all Caesar did for them and they're ready to set Caesar on fire. Then Brutus hands over to Mark Antony and says, now here, you can finish saying whatever you like. And Mark Antony comes, and that's where that famous speech is, where he starts with, friends, Roman countrymen, lend me your ears. Because the crowd is so angry, they're not even able to hear him. And he says, I've come here to bury Caesar and not praise him. The evil that men do lives after them, the good is interred with their bones. Meaning, what evil things people do will live on forever. Whatever good he's done charity will be buried with him. And through that speech, he'll slowly change the crowd and move the crowd back into loving Caesar. By the time he's finished, Rome is split into two and there's civil war.
And he will keep saying, yet Brutus is an honorable man.
Yet Brutus is an honorable man. So it's the beautiful way this law is applied. Because first Brutus uses this law and he destroys Caesar to grab the limelight and say, you can't have Caesar around and share the power with him. So they get rid of Caesar. But then Mark Antony uses the same strategy, but just through words. He changes the whole atmosphere of the Roman Empire, and Roman Empire dissolves into civil war, which is...
And Mark Antony wins the war.
Correct.
And then what happens is, Mark Antony is overthrown by Augustus.
Correct, because he's enamored by Cleopatra, who uses the same thing on him. So it's a very... When we see the threads of history, we tend to repeat it over and over again. We never seem to learn. Even when we do a great move and we con somebody and others, we think we are above it. We think we are smarter than everybody and nobody can fool us. Until someone comes down the road and fools us by the same strategies we used. என்ன சொல்றீங்க ஆனந்த்?
So, this is a great fun. நான் இது எனக்கு ரொம்ப நாள் நான் டிஸ்கஸ் பண்ணணும்னு நினச்சிருந்தேன். And I was in the shadow of my father right through his life. And my pivot also came after my father passed away. Of course, I had made some TV appearances when he was alive, but I had not become as popular as I am today. and I pivoted. நான் வந்து pivot பண்ணேன், நான் கம்ப்ளீட்டாக மாறினேன். The changes I made, my book took off, everything took off. I am not a carbon copy of what my father was, but there are a lot of elements of my father in that. So நீங்கள் என்ன பண்ணணும்னா, if your father was a great man like my father was, you will have to take elements out of it, see what fits you, what fits your personality, and then do it. You don't, unless your father is very obstinate and does not want you to grow, and then the entire legacy is in being in danger, then you have to do what Chandrababu Naidu did to N.T. Ramarao, and you have to dethrone him. But normally you don't have to go to such extremes in life. That's what Chandrababu Naidu பண்ணதை நீங்கள் பண்ண வேணாம். இன்றைக்கி ரொம்ப இங்கிலீஷில் பேசிட்டேன், சாரி. நாளைக்கு நிறைய தமிழில் பேசுகிறேன். பட் தி எலிமெண்ட்ஸ் இது தான். உங்கள் அப்பாவோட கிரேட் ஷூஸில் நீங்கள் வரணுன்னா தேர் ஆர் செவரல் ரூட்ஸ். ஒன் ரூட் இஸ் நீங்கள் வந்து கம்ப்ளீட்டாக அவனை ஓவர் த்ரோ பண்ணிட்டு அதை கம்ப்ளீட்டாக தூக்கி போட்டு மிதிக்கிறது. இன்னொன்று வந்து ஃபஸ்ட்டு அவரை காப்பி பண்ணுற மாதிரி காப்பி பண்ணிவிட்டு அதுக்கப்புறம் உங்கள் ஓன் ஒரிஜினாலிட்டியை கொண்டு வருது. மூணாவது, நீங்கள் பிவட் பண்ணி உங்கள் அப்பா லெகசியில் ஒரு பெரிய போர்ஷனை எடுத்து நீங்கள் தனியாக டெவலப் பண்ணுறது. பட் இந்த ரிவர்சல் என்ன சொல்கிறதுனா, நீங்கள் அப்படியே கம்ப்ளீட்டாக அப்பாவை தூக்கி போடுறேன்னா பாத் டப்புன்னு ஒன்று இருக்கும், அதில் தான் குழந்தைய குளிப்பாட்டுவோம். குழந்தைய குளிப்பாட்டுற டப்பில் கம்ப்ளீட்டாக தூக்கி போடுறேன்னு சொல்லிவிட்டு குழந்தையும் சேர்த்து தூக்கி போட்டிங்கன்னா எல்லாமே போயிடும். அதுதான் முக்கிய அனில் அம்பானி பண்ணார்.
And one important thing ஆனந்த் சொன்னது ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கணும் என்னென்னா, வாட் எவர் யூ டூ, your children will be always observing and learning from you. Anand, when we were discussing about a personal friend of ours who we know, whatever he did to his father, his son is giving to him in dividends now.
Yes.
So always be aware. Be respectful to your father and the way you do the legacy and all that. Be careful in what you do, because your children are உங்களை பார்த்து கற்றுன்னு இருப்பாங்க.
நீங்கள் உங்கள் எல்டர்ஸ் எப்படி நடத்துகிறீங்களோ உங்கள் பசங்க உங்களை அப்படி தான் நடத்துவாங்க. அது நீங்கள் உங்கள் பேரண்ட்ஸை மரியாதை இல்லாமல் பசங்க மாதிரி நடத்தினீங்கன்னா நாளைக்கு உங்களுக்கும் அதே கதை தான். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.